Today I'm going to show you 3 solid ways to reduce highlights, hotspots and shine from your portraits in Photoshop. And at the end, I'm going to show you a bonus method that is really fantastic. So without any further ado, let's get started. #dshine. Let's roll. So here we are in the magical world of Photoshop, and if you want to download any of the photos used in the video, make sure to go ahead and check the links in the description. Okay, so here we have an image of a beautiful lady flashing a dark lipstick, maybe a black lipstick, I'm not sure. So the first method is using the regular healing brush tool. Alright, let's zoom in quite a bit, and first of all, create a new layer. Okay, very simple, click on the new layer button, just creates a new layer. Now select the healing brush tool, the regular healing brush tool. Then here's the key, change the blend mode of this one to darken. Okay, now zoom in quite a bit and make sure sample all layers or current and below is checked. What that means is that if you set that to current layer, it will only sample from the current layer, but the current layer doesn't have anything. It's a blank new layer. So make sure you set that to all layers or current and below. All layers will sample from every layer, which means whatever you see on the canvas right now. On the other hand, current and below will sample from the current layer and the layer which is below it. In this case, there are just 2 layers, really doesn't matter, select all layers and just zoom in quite a bit. Now, if you select the healing brush tool, sample from any area and paint on a brighter area, what the darken blend mode will do, it will only paint on the areas. And listen to this very carefully. It will only paint on the areas which are brighter than the sampled area. So if we try to just take a sample from this area and paint in here, it will just paint on that bright area. And if you try to take a sample from here, paint on here, it will not do anything. So it only paints on the areas which are brighter than the sampled area. Now think of it this way if this sounds confusing. If you choose the darken blend mode, you are saying to Photoshop, hey Photoshop, when I paint darken, okay, when I paint darken, and if you cannot darken, do nothing. So if you sample from a bright area and paint on a dark area, you cannot do anything. Why? Because you cannot darken a darker area from brighter pixels, right? You cannot darken a dark thing using bright colors. You have to use darker colors. And that's why when we choose darken, we are saying, if you can darken, darken it. If you cannot darken, do nothing. And that's why when you take a sample, it will only paint on the areas which are brighter than the sampled areas, because that way it will have the ability to darken it. Okay, so that thing is taken care of. Here's another shine, and let's take a sample from this area. Now I'm doing a mistake on purpose. Let's take a sample from a dark area, very dark area, and paint it. Now this looks strange. Very dark area and paint it. It looks very dark. Now here's another tip when it comes to choosing darken. When you have a choice of sampling from a lighter area and a darker area, always sample from the lighter area. Why? Because if you sample from a darker area, there is a chance that you might over darken it. Okay? But if you sample from an extra light area, it will do no harm. So suppose you sample from an area which is lighter than the area that you're painting on. It just won't paint because the area that you're painting on is darker than the sampled area. It just won't paint. But if you choose a very dark area, there is a chance of over darkening. So here's the tip. When you have a choice of sampling from a lighter area and a darker area, always choose the lighter area. So we had a choice. We can sample from this area which is light and just paint on this. That looks more natural. There you go, just like that, and it's taken care of. Now similarly here, don't take sample from here and paint it. It will just over darken it. Take sample from here which is lighter. There you go. And if you choose something which is very light, doesn't matter, it just won't paint. Okay, so always take samples from lighter areas, and it is also taken care of. Have a look at the before and after. So this is the before and this is the after. We took care of this, and we have a little bit light area left in here. So we can take care of this by sampling from this particular area and just paint in here. Now this is too much. Choose the lighter area always, and something like this. And there you go. Have a look at the before, after. I think we did a little mistake. We can erase that and do that again. Have a look. Now this is another benefit of doing this on a separate layer. So it's on its own layer. So that's the benefit that we get. So let's turn this back on and we can erase that. Take the eraser and just erase this area. We kind of messed it up a bit. Okay, let's turn this off. Just erase that and then do that again. Select the regular healing brush tool, not the spot one, the regular one, and just sample from here and just paint on this particular area. You get the idea how to do that. Before, after, before, after. Now it's too much. You can just decrease the opacity. Decrease the opacity to 0 and then gradually increase it. Now that's better. Now let's have a look at the next example. Have a look at the before and after first. Before, after, next example. Now as you can see in this example, let me zoom out so that you can see the image completely. Sunlight is pouring through and shining on his face. We want to remove that. So similarly, let's zoom in quite a bit. Create a new layer and then select the regular healing brush tool and just make sure the blend mode is darken. All layers is selected or current and below is selected. And if you sample from here, it will only paint on those extra bright sunlight areas. Isn't that cool? Just those areas, and you can just paint in those areas slowly, and that is taken care of. Just paint in. Similarly here, let's zoom in, and this is too much zoom. Okay, let's take a sample from this. And if you're wondering how am I making the brush bigger and smaller, it's also very simple. Hold the alter option, the right mouse button, drag it to the right to make it bigger, drag it to the left to make it smaller, drag it up to make it soft, drag it down to make it hard. So make it soft, make it a little big, Alt, hold the alter option, click on it, sample from it, and just paint on this area. Sample from it again, sample, and there you go. It's taken care of. Have a look at the before and after. So this is the after and this is the before. We deleted it. Now if you think it's too much, I think I will leave it at that, but if you think it's too much, you can decrease the opacity. I think it's better. Have a look, before, after. Now let's switch to the next example and then we'll go to another method. So as you can see in this example, we have some highlights, but you can not clearly see it. Let me just apply more highlights. Okay, I'm destroying the image just to show you how to solve it. Okay, image, adjustments, curves. I'll just add some highlights to it so that you can see how to remove it, just like that. Okay, there we go. Click OK. Now, similarly in this one, create a new layer. Okay. Now, there's a twist in this image. Just stay tuned for that. Okay. If you select the healing brush tool, darken all layers, just take a sample from this and start painting. Okay, let's make it start painting. Don't pick up the brush. It will leave a smudge there. It will just, okay. There you go. It literally solves the problem. Have a look at the before and after. So before, after, but here's the problem. You lose the skin texture. You have a new skin texture here. You have a new skin texture, but you lose the original skin texture of this area. That's something that would happen. Now, if you try to decrease the opacity here, which you would, what will happen is you will see both skin textures. So you'll see a part of this skin texture and that skin texture cross-hatching, and it might not matter to you, but if you're a high-end retoucher, it might matter to you a lot, okay? So that's good. That looks good for most part. But if you want to make the skin texture see-through, make the original skin texture see-through, here's what you can do. You can increase the opacity all the way to 100% and then double click on the right hand side of the layer and take the slider of the underlying layer from left to right. If you do that, you will introduce the dark areas of the underlying layer, or the layer which is underneath it, which is this. So the dark pores of the underlying layer will show up and the light pores will be covered by this layer. So you can do that. Let's zoom in and take the slider of the underlying layer. As you can see, as we do this, the dark areas are becoming more and more visible and the white bright areas are covered by the current layer. But that's kind of looking a little strange, so we need to make it smoother. Hold the alter option, click on it and take this slider to the right, just like this. and take it to the left. Okay, now that looks a little better, and then you can go ahead and decrease the opacity to 75% before, after. And there you go, there you have it solved. You might decrease it even more, and done. And create a new layer. For different areas you can create different layers as well, because you might want different opacities or different effects in different areas. So create a new layer, and then you can choose the same healing brush tool and do the same. Just take a sample from this, take a sample from this area, and just start painting like that. And then you can go ahead and decrease the opacity if you want. And that's how to do it. Now let's switch to the second method. And the second method, which is something which I've already shown you, but let me show that to you again so that it becomes a set of all 4 methods. And it is much easier. But it doesn't give you so much of a quality result like this one, but it has its own pros and cons. Alright, so the second method is using the spot healing brush tool. Let's go ahead and delete both of these layers and select, right click in here and select the spot healing brush tool. Now, similarly in this one, change the blend mode to darken and new layer. Just make sure sample all layers is checked. With tiny little strokes, just keep on painting, just like this. Okay, just like this. I'm going to fasten up the process for you. Now we are done with this. Let's have a look. Now as you can see, it has applied a little bit of smudgy effect here. Have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Of course we have done a pretty good job, but it's very smudgy and we have lost the skin texture. Now it is one of the advantages of this method. Since we have lost the skin texture, if we decrease the opacity, there will be no cross hatching. We'll have the original skin texture inside of that. Okay, so if you decrease the opacity to say 51%, let's have a look at the before and after. So this is the after and this is the before. You have the original skin texture. Unlike the healing brush tool, the regular healing brush tool, where we applied some other area skin texture, in this case you have the original skin texture because the darkening that we did, that's completely smooth. Okay, also what you can do, you can increase the opacity to 100%, double click on the right hand side of the layer to open up the layer styles dialog box, and then you can take the underlying layer slider from left to right, just like that, and make it smoother by holding the alter option, clicking on it, taking them apart like that. And then there you go. If you're satisfied with this, click OK, have a look. Then you can go ahead and decrease the opacity if you think it's too much. Okay, now that looks very, very natural. Have a look. Before, after, before, after, before, after. Right? It's reduced. Now it's time for us to jump into the third way, which is the quickest, and that is using the patch tool. So how do we do that? Make a copy of the background layer. In this case, you cannot create a new layer and just have that area in that new layer separately. And that's one of the major drawbacks of the patch tool. So you have to make a copy of the background layer by holding Ctrl and pressing J. If you're using a Mac, that would be Command J, Ctrl J. Okay. In this, let's just select the patch tool by right clicking here and choose the patch tool. Now simply just make a selection of the area which is highlighted, just like this. And then make sure you have source selected here, patch is normal, and just move it to an area with no shine, just like this. And there you have it removed. Now it's too much. What you can do, you can go to edit and then fade patch selection. Now here's where the magic happens. I can decrease the opacity. This is 0. 0 opacity is nothing. It's just nothing. You did nothing. 100 opacity is complete replacement. Think of it like this. This is like undo on a slider. When you have it 0, it's completely undone, like you did nothing. When you have it 100, the effect is completely applied. So when you have it 50, it's like a partial undo. Okay, so let's keep it at that. 29-ish is fine. Click OK once you're satisfied. Control or Command D. And this method was taught to me by Scott Kelby. He's an awesome Photoshop expert is one of my inspirations, and I was very happy when recently in one of his webcasts he gave me a shout out. That made my day. Anyway, let's just move into this tutorial back in. Let's move into the nose. Similarly, we'll take this area, make a selection of it, and move it to an area where we have no shine, like this, and then edit, fade patch selection. Let's just keep it at, okay. This is a really quick way. So let's move to the next example. In this image, as you can see, there's a lot more hotspots here. Now, the area of hotspots is too much. And for this, I'll show you a way which is better for bigger hotspots or shine. All right. So similarly in this one, you can make a copy of the background layer by holding the Control or Command and pressing J. And then you can also make a copy by dragging the background layer and dropping it on the new layer icon. And that makes a copy. Now, zoom in, take the patch tool, make sure the patch is normal and diffusion is 5, source is selected, make a selection of this, drag it and take it in an area where there is no shine and just drop it. And there you have it removed. Now, before you press Control or Command D, you need to go to Edit and then Fade Patch Selection and decrease the fade, just like this. Okay, now here's a warning here. Let me show you. If you make a selection of this, if you sample it right, then you forgot to go to Edit and Fade Patch Selection and you press Control or Command D. Now, if you want, you can press Control Alt Z, Command Option Z, Z as you pronounce, Control Alt Z, if you want to go back. So you went back, and then if you want to go to Edit, Fade Patch Selection, you cannot do it. And that's why I said it's a warning. It's a warning because just after you did it, just after you replaced it, only then, just then, at that moment, you have to go to Edit, Fade Patch Selection. If you do anything else, that is gone. Okay, keep that in mind. All right. So similarly, you can do it for this area. You can do it for this area. That's too much. Okay, I did a mistake here, so just messed it up a bit. So you get the idea how to do it, right? So really simple. And make sure once you take a sample, now here's another warning. Once you replace a particular area, you'll see something which is called repetition. So you'll see a pattern forming out here. So you can see this pattern. You can see it happening again here. So you can again just get this right. So make sure that pattern does not happen. Remove that pattern because that gives an image a very bad sign that it was retouched. Okay. Now let me show you a way which is much better when it comes to large hotspots or large shiny areas. Okay. So let's go ahead and delete this background copy and let's move to the fourth and the bonus way, and that is using curves with Blend If. Simply create a curves adjustment layer by clicking on the adjustment layer icon and choose curves. Now darken it. Just like this. It can also darken the highlights by taking it down like that. Now what you can do, double click on the right hand side of the layer and you want to just restrict the darkness to the bright areas of the photo, and you can do that using Blend If. So double click on the right hand side of the layer to open the Layer Styles dialog box, or right click and choose Blending Options. Does this exact same thing. Now take the slider of the underlying layer from left to right. See what happens. This deletes the dark areas of the underlying layer from the current layer. Or in other words, this deletes the dark areas of the layers which is beneath it from the current layer. Or in other words, this deletes the effect of the curves from the dark areas. As simple as that. Now, let's take the slider and make sure it's just limited to the bright area like that. And once you're ready, hold the alter option, click on this because this is very harsh. Let's make it smooth, take it all the way to the right, and let's just control it. How much of an area you want to be in darkness. Okay, just like that. Once you're satisfied, hit OK and have a look at the before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. Very quick way to do it. It kind of sometimes might look a little unrealistic, but if you decrease the opacity, it's a really cool method. Okay, have a look. Before, after. It's a really nice effect. Now let's try this on another image, on this one. We have a lot of hot spots, lot of highlights in this photo. So first of all, let's go ahead and clear this mole out. It's kind of little distracting jumping out of the photo. You don't remove a mole, you reduce a mole because that removes the characteristic. Now, when you're retouching portraits, you have to ask the person whether they want their mole removed or not, mole or birthmark or whatever there is. If they say no, if that's a characteristic of them, then you can reduce it because that might be jumping out of the photo because camera kind of enhances those things. Okay. Now this is not a mole. This is, I think, some pimple or something. You can remove that. Okay. Okay, that's gone. Now, simply create a curves adjustment layer, click on this adjustment layer icon and choose curves. Similarly, take it down from the highlights. Not too much. Double click on the right hand side of the layer and then similarly take the underlying layer slider from left to right like that. Let's zoom out and let's see where the effect is being affected. Like that, and take it all the way to the right by holding the alter option. I clicked on it, it's separated. Now let's just control this. Okay, that looks good. Click OK and then you can control the opacity. Yeah, that's nice. Now let's decrease it even more, just like this. And if you think the curves adjustment layer is affecting the colors of the photo, so if you take it very much down, you'll see this. See, it's affecting the colors. If you don't want it to affect the colors, you can change the blend mode of this one to luminosity. That helps a little bit. Okay. So if you change the blend mode to luminosity, see, it doesn't affect the colors. Have a look. Normal and luminosity. Okay. That's something you can do. It's too much. Okay. There you go. Have a look at the before and after. So this is the after. This is the before. Too much highlights and after. That looks natural. Now guys, there are no limitations to Photoshop. You can mix and match all of the 4 methods or whatever method you have found. Okay, so you can zoom in. It's good for overall hotspots, but for little hotspots, you can use the first method or the second method or whatever method you choose. You can also use the patch tool. So let's just turn this layer off, create a new layer. You can use, for example, the spot healing brush tool or the healing brush tool. Just zoom in, change it to darken, all layers, sample from this area and cover this area, sample from probably this area and cover this area, and you get the idea how to do this. So this is too much highlights and just cover that, and you have to be a little bit careful in the lips area. So for the lips, I'll create a new layer and then maybe I'll try the spot healing brush tool. As I said, mix and match all the 4 methods. Just try to paint it, and that kind of looks strange. That looks better. Yep, that looks good. Now when the healing tool doesn't work, you can use the spot healing. When the spot healing doesn't work, you can use the healing. Just play with it. Now decrease the opacity of this one. That looks good. Now turn on the curves adjustment layer. Now you have overall removed all of the highlights. Now this is too much removal of the nose highlight. Before, after, this is, let's decrease the opacity of this one. And there you go. Before, after. Doesn't this look great? So there you go, 4 ways to de-shine your photos in Photoshop. Spot healing brush tool, healing brush tool, the regular one, patch tool, and curves with blend if. Very simple ways to de-shine your photos, and always remember to reduce the opacity because sometimes we overdo things. I hope this video helped you, and if it did, make sure to give us a like, and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe, ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss a thing. I'll see you guys in my next one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.